Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined on this Thursday morning by Andrew Erickson and by Derek Brown. And fellas, as we always do every Thursday morning, we are talking starts, we are talking sits. Today's show, we're starting with the sits. Week 8 already. For some reason, the NFL decided no buys this week. Despite the fact that we had 6 last week, we are back to no buys. So it is a full slate of players that we will be talking about. Like I said, starting with the must-sit players, and we're starting with the must-sit running backs. And Erickson, we're starting with you.
Gonna sit Brian Robinson for the Washington Commanders now. DBro tried to get into the show sheet and add Brian Robinson, but man, slowpoke, man. I got him first because he is probably the number one sit when it comes to the running back position this week. Look, the matchup is horrible. Eagles are the number one defense in terms of fewest fantasy points allowed per game to the running back position. And Brian Robinson's not even getting all the volume anymore in this backfield. Like, the Commanders have now turned into a 3-headed monster. You know, Halloween is approaching, but Chris Rodriguez is now getting snaps and touches, especially in the red zone. So I know Brian Robinson has scored in the last 2 weeks. Consider yourself lucky. He's not going to do that this week. So you need to get away from Brian Robinson. Look, he has 24 carries for 64 yards in his last 3 games combined.
Oh.
No on Brian Robinson this week.
Yeah, DBro, obviously this is a player you tried to get as well, so I'll kind of let you weigh in too.
Yeah, I mean, Erickson had all the points, man. I mean, for me, it's just like, when I wrote up this back for the primer, I'm like, you can't play any of these guys. There's no way. Like, no matter how you slice this, it's like, oh, well, maybe we can go with touchdown equity. Oh, no, that's Chris Rodriguez. Maybe we can lean on pass game equity. No, that's Antonio Gibson. Oh, maybe we can go with matchup. That's nobody. So you can't start anybody from the Commanders' backfield this week. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty a fair one, and it's a good player to start with considering the consensus we have there. So let's move to the next player here. DBro, who's your first must-sit?
Look, I know everybody's loved him, and he's done a lot of great things for Fantasy Manager this year, but you got to sit Zack Moss. And this is not just talking about, I know he popped up with the injury report with an elbow and a heel injury, weird combination, but here we are. Even if he plays, this is now Jonathan Taylor's backfield. His snaps are trending up. We saw Zack Moss lose the entire red zone role. Jonathan Taylor got all the work inside the 20 last week. So whether you want to go with, oh, well, he's banged up. Oh, well, JT's getting more work. Oh, well, his touchdown equity in this offense has been vaporized. As well as the matchup is horrible for him. You're talking about a Saints run defense that's allowed the 5th lowest touchdown rate, the 4th lowest yards after contact per attempt, and they also have the 5th lowest success rate to zone runs, and that's 77% of what Zack Moss's carries have been on. So, yeah, not playing Zack Moss. Not going to do it.
Do you think that the toothpaste is out of the tube and we're never going to get this early season Zack Moss back? Or, I mean, he did still have 18 carries to Jonathan Taylor's 18 carries, obviously in less valuable situations, last week. But are you thinking that this was the end of the Zack Moss startable and fantasy stretch of the season, like permanently?
Yep. Time to toss that tube into the trash, man. Just how it goes.
Erickson, give me your next must sit.
Deontay Foreman. Had a massive game last week against the Las Vegas Raiders. It was a smash spot for him. We talked about him on the show, I believe, last week, and he delivered, 3 touchdowns, but that's not going to be the case this week. Look, the thing with Foreman that you want to keep in mind is even though he was really productive last week, Darrington Evans was still splitting carries and snaps with him despite how productive he was. So with Roschon Johnson coming back, practicing in full this week, coming back from his concussion, like, we're going to see a split committee backfield in some way, shape, or form. Now, I don't want to project exactly how the usage is going to be because I literally don't know. I think that Foreman has earned a role on offense based on how well he's played the last 2 weeks, but the team really likes Roschon Johnson. And, Roschon would have been the starter if he had not gotten hurt. So we'll see how things kind of shake out, but it's going to be probably split in some way, shape, or form. And the matchup is not the Raiders again. They're not playing the Raiders. They're playing the Chargers on the road. They're 8.5-point dogs. And I can at least confirm, I feel confident saying Foreman's not going to be involved in the passing game. He's never been involved in the passing game. I know he was last week, but it's very, very rare. And Roschon is something that's where he thrives the most. In pass pro, catching passes out of the backfield. He's been doing that since basically week 1 when he's been healthy. So I don't like the matchup for Foreman, especially when you look at the Chargers run defense that usually is one we want to target. they've been really good the last 2 weeks. Fewer than 35 rushing yards allowed to both Isaiah Pacheco and Tony Pollard. So those teams can both run the football. Like, those are two good running backs. So D'Onta Foreman, for me, I know he was a monster last week. Not going to be the case here.
Are you willing to start Roschon this week, Erickson?
I really don't want to start any Bears running back, to be totally honest. I mean, if I had to start one, it would be Roschon. But again, you are entering uncharted waters because what's his role going to be? Like, we've never seen him play alongside a healthy D'Onta Foreman or an active D'Onta Foreman. And he's also coming off concussion. So, like, how much usage does he really get? Now, I think that the pass catching is there. So I think there is a floor. But what kind of ceiling is that going to offer for the Bears, who are, again, massive dogs on the road?
Yeah, DBro, what are you doing with this backfield this week?
Trying to avoid it like the plague, man. Like, this backfield could be the same thing as Commanders or the Arizona Cardinals the week before. Like, this could be a three-way committee. And I love the fact that Erickson pointed out that the Chargers have been a good run defense, because everybody keeps talking about the Chargers out on social media, and they're like, oh, it's kind of like the Bears. Everybody's like, oh, start your running backs versus the Bears. It's like, no, the Bears are a good run defense. Oh, start everybody versus the Chargers. No, they are a very good run defense. They're top 5 in the lowest explosive run rate allowed and missed tackles rate. So you don't need to be targeting the Chargers this year. This is the year to stay away with running backs.
If you guys need new tires for your car, Discount Tire is your go-to. They have exceptional service, and you get 30% shorter average wait time when you buy and book online at discounttire.com. They have this really cool feature called Treadwell, which is an online tire buying guide that gives you transparency on tire performance, as well as personalized recommendations based on your location and driving habits. Discount Tire is also the largest independent tire retailer in the country, so it has the biggest selection of tires and wheels. And here's a pro tip from the experts at Discount Tire. You can prevent wear and boost gas mileage by keeping your tires properly inflated. Tire pressure supports the weight of your vehicle and is important to check for safety. So if it's been over a month since you last checked your tire pressure, stop by one of their local stores for a free tire safety and air pressure check. Discount Tire, let's get you taken care of. DBro, give me your next must-sit running back.
So we did get the news, at least right now. Aaron Jones missed Wednesday's practice. I don't know if he plays this week. I do not want to play A.J. Dillon, even if he is out. One, A.J. Dillon has not been anything special this year. All of his efficiency metrics are in the trash can this season. So outside of, and this is not the Raiders, so they're not going to help A.J. Dillon look like a good running back again. The Minnesota Vikings, again, we're talking about run defenses that people want to target and they shouldn't be targeting. Minnesota Vikings have been a very good run defense this year. Second lowest explosive run rate allowed, 8th lowest yards after contact per attempt, and 10th fewest fantasy points per game allowed to running backs. I don't want to play A.J. Dillon. If you have another wide receiver you can throw into a flex or what have you, you need to do it. You need to sit A.J. Dillon.
Where are you ranking Dillon this week?
Right now, assuming Aaron Jones, if he's out, which is how I kind of ranked him, RB 32, and I might drop him a little bit lower than that.
Erickson, are you higher or lower on Dillon than RB 32?
Well, I still have Aaron Jones in my rankings, so it depends on, again, he'll go up, but it's one of the, I mean, we've done this all year with A.J. Dillon. Like, even when he started, it's like you're getting RB3 production, and again, if you're trying to flex somebody, I'd rather chase a wide receiver in a good matchup with more upside, and Dillon's just going to offer a touch floor if he's just the starting running back.
Like, Dillon's in that same range as like all these other guys we don't want to start, like the Bears backfield guys, Kareem Hunt, all these guys were just like, I don't think so.
Yeah. Erickson, give me your third and final must-sit running back of the week.
Miles Sanders. Again, I just don't know what his role, I mean, he may have lost his job. I don't know. Like, Frank Reich has already talked about that being more of a committee when it comes to running the football. I know they want to run the football a little bit more, to protect Bryce Young. I mean, it's a decent matchup against the Texans, but I just can't trust what Sanders' workload is going to be, again, because he's been totally outplayed by Chuba Hubbard. So Hubbard has played well enough to earn snaps and touches in the backfield, whereas Miles Sanders, even coming off the bye week, he's been dealing with injuries. I am not pleased with what I've seen with Sanders, and if I had to start a Panthers running back, I would start Chuba Hubbard and hope that what he has done is going to carry over before the bye week into this matchup against the Texans. So Miles Sanders is someone I gotta wait and see him play well first before I can even think about starting him again.
Yeah, DBro, where are you at on Sanders? Because he's the type of player that was drafted in a spot that he's likely one of the first, couple of running backs that fantasy managers drafted. And depending on how injuries have gone for their team and how successful they've been on waivers, they might be in a position where they kind of have to start him, even if you really don't have any trust level with him. So where do you come down on Sanders for this week, DBro?
I've got Sanders at RB 35, and just to peel back the curtain further, I've got Chuba Hubbard ranked above him. I think that regardless of if we want to talk about does Sanders get his job back, Chuba Hubbard's easily been the better running back in this backfield, even when Miles Sanders has been healthy. Like, this guy's outside the top 35, top 40 running backs in basically every efficiency metric that you look at. Just because he's healthy right now, I don't think that changes.
Yeah. All right, DBro, wrap us up on the running back segment with your last must-sits.
Well, I kind of teased it earlier. Kareem Hunt, I do not want to play him. And continuing with this theme about name value as far as these run defenses, people think that you can run on the Seattle Seahawks, and that is definitely not true. They have the 6th highest stuff rate this season, 11th lowest yards after contact per attempt allowed, and the 11th fewest fantasy points per game allowed to running backs. So I don't know where this narrative comes up. And yesteryear, you're like, no, you can throw to running backs versus Seattle. Can't even do that this year. And you can't run versus them. So Cleveland Browns, PJ Walker-led offense, are they even going to get into the end zone or the red zone, much less? No, I don't want to play Kareem Hunt.
The consensus rankings on FantasyPros.com in half PPR have Kareem Hunt as RB 26. Is that too high, too low, or just right, DBro?
That is too high. I've got Kareem Hunt. Where are you at, Mr. Kareem Hunt? RB 32, and I've got him. Again, it's this nasty like RB 3 tier of him, Deontay Foreman, you tell me, Erickson, would you rather play Kareem Hunt this week, or would you rather play Cam Akers in a smash matchup? I'm going with Akers.
I'm going to probably play Kareem Hunt and just trust the volume because, again, I don't know. I mean, look, Akers is trending in the right direction, but, again, it flip-flops. 1 week they give a lot of touches to Alexander Madison. The next week they give a lot of touches to Cam Akers. So for me, it's still Jerome Ford's not going to play. So Kareem Hunt's the lead running back. And, yeah, Seattle is a good run defense, but Kareem Hunt's involved in the passing game.
Is he the lead running back? Pierre Strong got more touches than him after Jerome Ford went out.
Yeah, in the fourth quarter of the game. That's all Pierre Strong's touches have been in garbage time. So, I think Kareem Hunt's... Okay, but who's getting touches?
So you're going with a PJ Walker-led offense over a Kirk Cousins-led offense. Am I hearing that right?
They are playing on the road. And the Vikings offense has been horrible on the road this year.
I will also say that was a pretty back and forth game. So just because they came in the fourth quarter, those were still some important touches.
Okay, but who's getting the red zone touches? That's all I care about because we already talked about how Seattle.
Are you so sure it's Kareem Hunt?
Yes, because they gave Kareem Hunt red zone touches when Nick Chubb was healthy. Of course they're going to give it to Kareem Hunt, not Pierre Strong.
Previous years, not this year, man.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Kareem Hunt was getting red zone touches over Jerome Ford. Who scored 2 touchdowns last week?
Yeah, all right.
All I can say, PJ Walker led offense.
Let's jump into
So they're going to get shut out by the Seahawks. They're going to score 0 points. They scored 38 points last week, or 39.
Okay. Let's jump into the Who Do I Start tool. This is free to use at fantasypros.com/start. Anybody listening can head there and put in your own starter sit questions up to 4 players at a time, which is a feature I really like. You can even pick and choose which experts your decision draws from. You can pick Erickson, you can pick DBro, you can pick both of them, you can pick none of them. Entirely up to you. Again, that's free to use at fantasypros.com/start. Erickson, are you starting Brian Robinson or Darrell Henderson this week?
Dude, come on. You're going to bring Darrell Henderson on to me like this?
I am.
Oh, God.
This is a hard decision, Erickson.
I just don't think Darrell Henderson is any good. I'm sorry. I just don't think
they're ranked
good,
back to back in the consensus rankings. So theoretically, it's a hard decision.
Every time I try to write off Brian Robinson, he just scores a random receiving touchdown he's done.
But you just poo-pooed on him, and you're just don't touch B-Rob.
I don't like Darrell Henderson either. I have zero faith trusting any Rams running back that's Sean McVay is controlling. So. At least, I'm going Brian Robinson.
That pain is real.
Where did you end up having Zach Evans ranked last week, Erickson?
I mean, I moved him way down after
Okay.
like we got more information. I mean, he was behind Royce Freeman for me. So
All
he
right,
was like,
I just wanted to make sure you didn't hurt yourself too much with that. So, DBro, obviously, I assume you're taking Henderson.
Oh, yeah. I'm going Henderson. I mean, I think his snaps could even go up this week. So, I mean, straight up off the couch, and he almost played 60% of the snaps if he's healthy walking into this one. And we need to mention this, too. Everybody's like, oh, we went back to the practice squad. Do you know that NFL teams can do that 3 times before they have to sign you to the 53? So that does not matter. He's going to come right back up. Do you think that Sean McVay said, well, Darrell Henderson, I trust you in pass protection. I trust you to play 60% of the snaps. Now we jettison you off to the practice squad and you will never be heard from again. Come on, man.
I mean, they did cut him last year in November when he led the team in rushing yards for Cam Akers, who Sean McVay hates. So just saying, never say never, because Myles Gaskin might actually be active this week. So who knows?
Erickson, Deonta Foreman or Alexander Madison, your favorite?
Oh, yeah, Alexander Madison, easy. It's a great matchup against the Packers. So
Miles Sanders or Jalen Warren?
Jalen Warren. I'm just more confident about his role, and he catches. Even though he didn't catch passes last week, until it's like a trend with Najee like taking over the receiving role, I expect Jalen Warren's receptions and targets to bounce back up.
DBro, Zack Moss or Chuba Hubbard?
I'm going to go Chuba. Yep.
How about AJ Dillon or Roshan Johnson, who we already talked about a bit?
Ugh. I'm gonna go with talent. I'll bank on Roshan Johnson. I don't care if it's a 3-way committee.
Even if Aaron Jones is officially out?
Yes. AJ Dillon, we've seen what this looks like. Like, AJ Dillon is just the Midwest version of Josh Kelly. That's all he is. He gets the starting job and he does nothing with it.
And then he scores points when nobody plays him, like Josh Kelly did last week.
Yeah.
That's true, man. It's like Austin Eckler's back. Josh Kelly's like time to Superman up,
salt
baby.
in the wounds of people that start him, and then when he actually scores points, no one plays him.
Kareem Hunt or Ramondre Stevenson?
Oh, it's Mondre.
They're only 2 spots apart in the consensus rankings, but Ramondre is ahead in those rankings. Let's go to the must-sit wide receivers. Erickson, start us off.
To start with Tyler Lockett for the Seattle Seahawks. So one thing just to kind of note that he's like dealing with like a hamstring injury. Like he was on the injury report last week. He's on the injury report again this week. So he's played, but just something coming to monitor. He's an older wide receiver. So you see these guys get banged up a little bit more, and sometimes it affects how they play on game day. And that's what we've seen from Lockett. Like Lockett hasn't really been that great this year in terms of his production. He's had one game with that 2 touchdowns, one game where he almost had 100 receiving yards. But besides that, like he's pacing career lows in yards after the catch per reception, yards per route run, 20% target share since week 3, which ranks 42nd. He's wide receiver 60 in points per game since week 3. So I just think that especially against the Browns defense, who run a lot of man coverage, Tyler Lockett's your zone beater. Like that's his bread and butter. That's where he is most productive, where Metcalf is the guy that usually eats up against man coverage. So Metcalf's going to be back this week. He's practicing in full. Jackson Smith and Jigba is starting to get more involved in the offense. So it's like, it's not a great matchup on paper because the Browns are a really good defense. It's not the type of defense that Lockett usually plays well against. And he's not even seeing like a significant target share with so many other mouths to feed in this offense. And the other big thing too, last week with the Colts wide receivers, who I think that were both honestly strong sits, but they both ripped off like these massive touchdowns. Like Michael Pittman got there like at the last second, like a 75-yard touchdown. He had 2 catches. Like he should have busted, but he didn't. But the thing is, Lockett has been horrible, or him and Geno Smith have been horrible trying to connect downfield. Lockett's 2 for 11 on targets of 20+ air yards this season. Like him and Geno are not connecting on these downfield passes, and that's the only way the Colts receivers got there last week against this stout Browns secondary. So for me, Tyler Lockett, especially with all these receivers available to me with no bye weeks, he's someone that I'm comfortable sitting for someone else with a better matchup.
Consensus agrees with you. He's down at wide receiver 37 for the week in half PPR. DBro, who's your first must-sit receiver?
My first guy, I'm going to go to the other side of the coin here. Amari Cooper. Again, PJ Walker led offense. I want no part of these Browns players. And we need to also talk about this. Amari Cooper has not been great against zone this year. His yards per route run has dropped from 1.94 to 1.75. Seattle's corners have been playing better. So again, the narrative of these defenses we want to target. Since week 4, Seattle has shut down perimeter wide receivers. They've allowed the lowest receiving yards to perimeter wide receivers and the 8th lowest PPR points per target. I do not want to play Amari Cooper this week.
Only has 18 fantasy points across his last 3 games, and 13 of those came in one game. So a couple of duds sprinkled in there. Has not been performing well, without Deshaun. Also, those matchups you mentioned, I think, are good points as well. So we'll move on to Erickson's next must-sit receiver.
So I mentioned the Colts receiver. So Michael Pittman Jr. is going to be a sit for me this week. So last week he got there, caught a 75-yard touchdown like late in the game. Because of that, he was sitting on one catch for like 20 yards. He was not doing anything, but he salvaged his day and saved you. But I don't like the matchup against the Saints. 5th fewest fantasy points allowed to perimeter wide receivers this season. They play a lot of man coverage. And that's where Michael Pittman has traditionally struggled this year, against man coverage. Now last week he beat the Browns defense for a 75-yard touchdown against man coverage. So his numbers got a little bit of a boost because of that. I just wouldn't bet on it happening again. So I would prefer just starting Josh Downs straight up, because it's just a much better matchup in the slot. We saw it on Thursday night when Christian Kirk had a monster game and Calvin Ridley was, he dressed up early for Halloween and went as a ghost. So the slot is where you want to target this Saints defense. So for me, that's Josh Downs and not Michael Pittman Jr. So I know he delivered last week. Don't fall for it. This is going to be a bust game for Michael Pittman.
He's wide receiver 31 in the consensus rankings. Too high, too low, just right.
I think that he's always going to end up kind of in that wide receiver 3 territory because he sees a lot of volume. But look, receivers bust all the time, and he's not
too high
in an offense where you can be confident enough that, Minshew's going to totally get it done for him. Like, a lot of Minshew's production has been garbage time, so I wouldn't bank on Michael Pittman having a
I have Pittman as a wide receiver 4, man. I don't want no part of him.
Really? Yeah, I was going to say, DBro, looks like you've got a wide receiver 44. Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Yep. Yeah. So many guys I want to start over Michael Pittman.
Yeah. Let's go to your next one, DBro.
Well, this will make you happy, Worm. I do not want to test the Baltimore Ravens secondary. I want to sit Hollywood Brown.
In the revenge game.
Hey, look, I wish I could sit here and wrote that up in the primer. I was like, I wish I could tout like all this revenge narrative stuff and be like, yeah,
this is the first time. This is the first time he's faced the Ravens, right? Am I forgetting a matchup they've had since that trade?
Pretty sure.
Yeah,
pretty sure.
I mean, they didn't play last year. I don't think, right?
So okay.
Yeah, but it's going to be a sad homecoming for Marquise Brown. You're looking at the Ravens secondary. They squashed perimeter wide receivers, allowing the lowest PPR points per target and the 12th lowest receiving yards to perimeter guys this season. Yeah, Hollywood's not going to be great, man.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because the prior to the Lions matchup, which obviously very much went in the Ravens' favor from right off the bat, and it put the Lions behind the 8 ball. There was a lot of talk about how some of these Ravens pass defense statistics are a little bit of a misnomer because they haven't really faced very many great quarterbacks, very many great receivers this year. So I'm still curious to see what they look like moving forward. Obviously Marlon Humphrey's getting healthier by the week, but he's not fully 100% yet. Marcus Williams is probably still going to be out on this one. So I'm still a little hesitant to say this is an elite pass defense, but they're still quite good. So
Yeah, but the area where you would attack Baltimore is up the middle and through the slot. Give me Arthur Mallett, Amon-Ra eating him up on a weekly basis, or at least last week versus Marlon Humphrey and Brandon Stevens. Stevens has played out of his mind. He has played amazing this year.
Yeah, another note just on the Ravens defense. Roquan did miss practice on Wednesday with a shoulder injury. It hasn't seemed serious the way they're talking about it as of yet, but he's so important to that defense. So just worth noting, for any of these matchups. Let's go to your next must-sit receiver, Erickson.
DeAndre Hopkins. You have to sit DeAndre Hopkins this week. I'm so, you're getting Malik Willis Will Levis. I mean, even with Ryan Tannehill, you could barely start DeAndre Hopkins. So for me, there is 0 touchdown upside. You're just hoping he's got to get like 15 targets, and you're hoping for like 5 for 50. Like that's like the best case scenario here with DeAndre Hopkins, because he's no touchdown upside. He hasn't scored a touchdown yet this year. He's getting a massive quarterback downgrade just in terms of like passing volume. Malik Willis, I think, is going to be better than he was last year, but we don't even know if he's even going to play that much, if he's going to start. They're talking about Will Levis starting. Either way, both these guys are sack machines. Like, they they take so much. Like, they're going to push Sam Howell for his money about who can be the most sacked quarterback on Sunday. So that's going to kill drives, and it's going to kill DeAndre Hopkins in this matchup, especially like the matchup in paper is not even good. Like, the Falcons are a good defense against wide receivers. AJ Terrell is playing really well this year. Falcons are second best against perimeter wide receivers. Now, Terrell can be beat. Mike Evans burned him last week, but Mike Evans is playing really well, and that's not the case with DeAndre Hopkins, who is he's a volume receiver, better against zone than man, and I really don't think that these inexperienced quarterbacks are going to look at Hopkins in man-to-man coverage when he's blanketed and try to rip the ball in there. They're going to try to play more conservative, run the ball with Derrick Henry, so it's just a really bad spot for DeAndre Hopkins. So he's coming off the bye week, and you should leave him on your bench.
Yeah, there is a 0% chance I would consider starting DeAndre Hopkins this week in any of my leagues.
Where do you have him ranked right now, Erickson? Because I got him in the wide receiver 4 range.
I have wide receiver 37. I mean, it's like hard because it's Hopkins, and you look at any like type of projections, and it's like he's never going to like end up being in the 40s because of just like how volume works. But like he could
but I don't even feel good
12,
about the volume. It's Will Levis volume.
He could see like 50, he could see 15 targets and catch 5 of them. Like, so even if
that
he does
catchable target
volume,
rate's going to look very bad this week.
It's just a bad look, especially because the Falcons, they're weak against tight end. I mean, if anything, like if you want to roll the dice on it'd be Chikakonkwo, like a tight end. Like you'd roll the dice on him because the Falcons are bad against tight ends and slot receivers. So, but that's not Hopkins. So
yeah, this feels like a game where they might like try and protect the young quarterbacks and just run like 35 times, and then we don't even see the volume.
You got to build the trade value for Derrick Henry.
Yeah, by running him into the ground. All right, DBro, who's your last must-sit receiver?
Courtland Sutton, and I understand that he snagged a touchdown the last time we played the Chiefs, and that totally saved his day. He did not get shadow Belagerius Sneed. I can't tell you that doesn't happen this week. Maybe they don't shadow him, but look, didn't need to shadow him because outside of the touchdown, he did diddly squat. Kansas City Chiefs have also put the clamps down on perimeter wide receivers. 13th fewest receiving yards for perimeter guys, 14th lowest PPR points per target. So, yeah, Courtland Sutton, look, Russell Wilson couldn't even get above the century mark for passing yards last time he faced the Chiefs. I'm not saying that he's not going to surpass 100 yards this time, but it's not going to be pretty.
Where were these Courtland Sutton touchdowns last year? Come on. Like is anyone else seeing this? He scores touchdowns every single week.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. Do you guys ascribe any value to like he has scored a touchdown in 5 of his 7 weeks this season? Like
that pain is real.
Like obviously we're not as optimistic as we were, or as some of us were last summer, Erickson, but like he is getting the red zone usage, and he is the guy that Russell Wilson is looking for in the rare opportunity when they have a chance to score. So, like, do we like find any value in that role, and maybe like it kind of raises his floor if you think there's a decent chance he gets a touchdown, DBro?
If I'm going touchdown hunting, I'm going other places. That is not one that I want to go touchdown hunting. And
yeah, I think that's fair. Erickson, I'm going to put 2 of your guys against each other, Tyler Lockett or Michael Pittman.
Ooh.
I would start Michael Pittman.
Ooh.
Where would you rank Hopkins below both those guys, by the way?
Yes.
How about DeAndre Hopkins or Tank Dell this week?
Tank Dell.
Yeah, Tank. Easy Tank.
Yeah.
And those are the Tyler Lockett Pittman one. Actually, that's like a 50-50 in the tool. So that's an interesting one to see where people come down on. DBro, Amari Cooper or Garrett Wilson this week?
I'm going to go Garrett Wilson. And I understand he's attached to the arm of Zack Wilson. Doesn't matter. I'm still going Garrett Wilson.
How about Marquise Brown or Deontay Johnson?
Oh, Deontay. Easy. Landslide.
And then Courtland Sutton or DK Metcalf?
I'm going to go DK. Seattle, if they have any chance to get against Cleveland's man coverage this week, it's going to have to run through DK. If not, it's lights out, baby. Forget it.
Let's head to the quarterback, tight end, defense/special teams section here. Must sit QB, TE, and DST. Erickson, who you got?
I'm going to sit Geno Smith. Big expectations with him last week, and he didn't really deliver like that much. It was really a great matchup for him against the Cardinals, and this is the worst matchup I think you could ask for. I get that Gardner Minshew was a monster for fantasy. He scored 2 rushing touchdowns. If you look at the quarterbacks that have actually done anything against the Browns, it's because they scored 2 rushing touchdowns. It was Gardner Minshew and Lamar Jackson. Geno Smith is not going to score 2 rushing touchdowns. So for me, even at home, don't want to play him against the Cleveland Browns. At tight end, Trey McBride. It looks like, okay, Zach Ertz is gone. Like, we should get him in a full-time role, and that's great. And maybe you should stash him. But do not play him against the Ravens. It's a no-fly zone when it comes to tight ends. And it's not just, oh, well, they haven't played anybody good. It's like, no, like they actually have like the personnel to like stop tight ends with Kyle Hamilton, with their strong safety play, and they're just strong defense overall, and giving up the second fewest fantasy points per game to tight ends. So if you're excited about McBride, I would keep him on the bench. Hopefully he just gets good usage in terms of like snaps and routes. I just wouldn't expect it to translate into a lot of production. Even if he gets a lot of targets, I don't think that he will necessarily be efficient with them. And lastly, with DST, I want to sit the Rams. Picked them up last week. I had them in a bunch of spots against the Steelers. They made the Steelers offense look like okay, which is just like not a great look. The Steelers were coming off a bye week and they were perfect in the red zone. Rams didn't have any answers for the Steelers. And now they're facing Dallas on the road. Dallas is also coming off a bye week. They have one top 10 finish this year. So the Rams defense, although it's been better than a lot of us thought they would be in real life, it really hasn't translated much to fantasy. So I'm going to bench the Rams.
Are you starting Trey McBride or Cole Kmet this week?
So yeah, Cole Kmet is in a weird, because ever since Bagent took over, like Cole Kmet has like basically been off the radar like entirely. Like Bagent hasn't like looked his way like once, but I'm more confident in his role. I don't hate the matchup necessarily against the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers, did they know how to cover Travis Kelce last week? Like, I get that it's not Travis Kelce's not Cole Kmet. They have Derwin James, but I mean, Brandon Staley just like doesn't know how to like scheme away certain players. So I would just take Cole Kmet. I know what his role is. I don't have to question it. Whereas, the Cardinals could get, I don't know, it looks like McBride will be the guy, but then Jonathan Gannon could decide, you know what? Jeff Swaim, let's get this guy out there. Let's get this guy more snaps. And then you're like tilting your face off because you started Trey McBride and then they started Jeff Swaim over him. So I would just go with Cole Kmet. I'm more confident in his role, even though he has been very poor with Bagent at quarterback.
DBro, who's your quarterback, tight end, and defense that you're sitting?
Well, with the news that Tyreek Hill might miss this week, I'm going to sit Tua Tagovailoa. As well as if you want to look back and harken back to the last time they played the Patriots, Tua finishes QB 26, and that was with Tyreek. What's he going to do if Tyreek Hill misses? And as well as New England has been, there are certain parts and pieces where you can pick apart their pass defense and be like, oh, okay, maybe we target them. And then you look a little bit deeper and you're like, oh, never mind. 12th lowest yards per attempt, 12th lowest passing touchdowns allowed, and the 9th fewest fantasy points per game allowed to quarterbacks this year. So Tua, he's going to have spike weeks again, like throughout the rest of the season. This ain't one of them. But moving over to tight ends, man, I don't understand, like, if people keep rolling out David Njoku, what are you looking at? Like, why would you want to play David Njoku? And I know we're on the consistent theme of the Browns, but this is every week, man. Like, why does anybody want to play David Njoku? He's done nothing this season. Nothing. He's the tight end 19 in fantasy points per game. He's outside the top 15 tight ends in target share, raw target volume, and air yard share. He has zero deep targets or red zone targets. So any high cholesterol usage you'd want out of David Njoku, it's not there. You'd be fasting. It's not good, people. So do not play David Njoku. I mean, pretty much he's droppable at this point. And as far as the defense, Carolina Panthers have been wretched versus everything pass defense-wise. And they're allowing the 6th highest yards per attempt. They're terrible versus the deep ball. They're also allowing the 11th highest adjusted completion rate. CJ Stroud is going to rip them to pieces this week. So we've talked about all these different defenses and like, oh, well, we need to understand these defenses are actually good. The Panthers are not good. This is not yesteryear Panthers. Brian Burns is not coming to save your day. Do not play the Panthers.
DBro, so the question I had for you in the Who Do I Start tool is Tua or Jared Goff, but just the way you are moving Tua down,
Goff.
I'm curious, give me some other names that might surprise people that you're going to start ahead of Tua this week. Because you've got him outside QB1 if your rankings are updated. It says you got him QB 13.
QB 13. I am considering moving Derek Carr above Tua. Baker Mayfield, which I know we're recording this in the Thursday show, but also Kenny Pickett, I really like this week. Jacksonville has not been a good pass defense, and now with Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, I know it sounds insane, but I would seriously consider possibly starting Kenny Pickett over Tua. His volatility this year, it's basically Tua top 3 week or Tua low end QB2 week.
I'm not saying it is insane, but I am agreeing it sounds insane at the very least to suggest that. But
sounds insane until it happens, man.
Quick recap here. The must-sit running backs. We've got Brian Robinson, Zack Moss, Deontay Foreman, A.J. Dillon, Miles Sanders, Kareem Hunt. The must-sit wide receivers. We've got Tyler Lockett, Amari Cooper, Michael Pittman, Marquise Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Courtland Sutton. Then we're also sitting Geno Smith and Tua Tagovailoa, Trey McBride and David Njoku, and the Rams and Panthers defenses. For DBro and Erickson, thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you again next time.